Do you ever really own the property that you buy? Do you ever really own your home? I oftentimes get asked by folks that I know, Derek, you're a relatively successful individual. Why is it that you're so hesitant to purchase a home? I tell them I'm not hesitant to purchase a home. I sort of have different priorities. And that sort of leads us down to a discussion of like home ownership, it's worthwhile, how worthwhile it is, and if they should own a home, and whether or not they're on the right path with their personal finances. These are all topics I'd love to discuss, and I obviously love to dive right in and give them some of my thoughts on the topic. Generally speaking, my opinion about home ownership comes down to basically three things that should determine whether or not home ownership is right for you. And when I say right for you, technically home ownership should be right for everybody. But if you have specific focuses and if you have goals in mind, maybe you should rethink home ownership, that is, specifically getting a mortgage to purchase a home. I feel it has a couple of major flaws. Really, the cost of home ownership in and of itself. Everybody knows about the purchasing price of a home and how prices have gone up over the past couple of years, particularly in areas that are gaining steam and are popular. Places like California, most places in Texas, Florida. Obviously, owning a home in New York has been prohibitively expensive for probably generations now. In places across the country that are growing, that have vibrant economies, prices of houses and homes have been going up steadily over the last decade. In fact, ever since the last Great Recession, caused by the last housing crisis, the 2008-2009 home mortgage crisis. And to a certain degree, home ownership for a lot of people in these areas has become, I hate to say it, out of reach. For an individual like me, that's not the case. I make pretty good money. I can own a home if I want to. But for the average individual, getting into a home, starter home even, has become prohibitively expensive. And that expense is going to continue to go up. As you know, there's obviously the cost of owning a home. Just the outright price of the house. Really depends on where you're at in the country, but the average home price, let's say the average home price is roughly $300,000. Add on to that the cost of a mortgage. Most individuals, if you're looking at the mortgage rates today, they're approaching 8% for a 30-year term. Now, if you take a look at the mathematics behind a 30-year mortgage on a $300,000 home, and you take into account that maybe you don't pay off the home early, maybe you just pay your mortgage month to month whenever your mortgage is due. In that scenario, and let's assume you do no other things with that mortgage, like refinance, etc. In a lot of instances, you could end up paying double for the house that you just purchased. So that $300,000 home turned into a $600,000 purchase. Now, in a lot of cases, that home will indeed double in price. Maybe more. Even though you're going to pay $600,000 for that home could eventually be worth $650,000 or more. So in the end, you'll at least break even and more than likely get out of that home buying decision with a little bit of profit, if you just consider the mortgage, that is. However, there are more costs associated to it. Obviously, there's upkeep of the home, but there's also property taxes. There's also realtor fees, HOA fees, and on and on. So in reality, a lot of folks do not even break even. And sometimes you lose out on total profit of that home if you take into account all of the costs. And that brings me to the second point about home ownership, the opportunity cost. So you just outlaid $600,000 for your $300,000 home. If you take a look at a mortgage calculator, or if you take a look at a calculator of any kind, if you put that same amount of money into an S&P 500 index fund, so $600,000 over 30 years, the amount of money that you get out of that far exceeds the value of your home doubling in that same time period. $600,000 over 30 years at an 8% clip, that's quite a bit of money in your pocket. And as you can see, that's also much greater than the value of your house, even if it doubled, maybe even more than doubled. So the opportunity cost of owning that same house, $300,000 house that you put a $300,000 mortgage down on, that you end up almost paying double for, it ends up becoming an opportunity cost sink. And really the third thing that makes me hesitant to purchase a home, it's the shift in focus that causes one to really migrate away from their goals and to settle into being average. Yes, I understand everybody needs to live somewhere, but the focus that homeownership takes away from your long-term goals can be quite extreme in a lot of instances. You need to keep up with your HOA, Home Ownership Association. They have rules and regulations to make sure that your lawn is trimmed, that your hedges are in a certain order, that you don't have a rusted truck in your front lawn. Things like that. Now, obviously, those are good for the upkeep of the neighborhood and making sure that the value of all the homes around you stay high. And in general, that's a good thing. But that time that you're focusing on making sure that your house is kept up, that's time that you could be working on your goals, your side hustle, your main hustle, getting it to grow as much as possible. And that little extra focus, that little hour here, that 2 hours on the weekend, that 3 hours on a Sunday, just getting all those things together. That's extra time that you could be putting into your businesses. So in a sense, that's another opportunity cost. But it's really an opportunity lost from a mental space perspective. I think, however, one of the things that makes me hesitate the most about home ownership, maybe not the most, but it's definitely something in the front of my mind, is that technically speaking, you never really own your home in any jurisdiction in the United States. Most jurisdictions in the United States. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. I mentioned earlier that there are fees and costs associated with home ownership that a lot of people don't factor in. One of those fees and costs that a lot of people do not factor in is the cost of property taxes. And property taxes essentially means, when you purchase a home, you're really purchasing the right to rent your home from the government. That's not necessarily a problem. I think, again, home ownership is good in the right circumstances for the right individuals. If you think about it, whenever you're done paying off your mortgage, you still have an obligation to maintain payments to another entity that, if you don't maintain those payments, if you don't maintain and pay those payments on time, that house could be confiscated from you and it goes back to the next highest bidder. Now, keep in mind there are upkeep payments for everything in life. If you own an automobile and you own it outright, no more payments on it, you purchase it with cash, etc., and you kind of let it rust in your driveway and you never get an oil change. You never get the maintenance every 2,000 miles or whatever it is. That car is also gonna rust out and become useless to you. So you need to make payments on it, certain payments on it, that'll keep it operating at optimal efficiency. So it's not as though you don't have to pay for anything after you're done paying for things. If you don't pay for those things and your car rusts in the driveway, that's still your car. You could get something back from that automobile if you sell it on eBay or something, or you could even have it restored at some point if you let it sort of fade away. That's not the case with home ownership, however. If you don't maintain your home ownership payments, it will be confiscated from you, and it'll be as though you never made all those payments, that $600,000 payment to the bank in the first place. That's not necessarily the best reason to not own a home, but it's definitely something to think about among the many things that I think about and that caused me to pause whenever the topic of home ownership comes up in my personal life and in my personal financial life. That doesn't mean I'll never own a home with those circumstances, but it definitely means that my priorities are elsewhere. My priorities are on making sure that my investments grow as fast and as high as possible. My main hustles and my side hustles grow as much as possible. Not necessarily on the house that I live in or maintaining my lawn and my hedges to make sure that all the homes around me also maintain their highest value. I let the individual that I rent from worry about all of that. Keeping up with the Joneses and owning homeses. Nice little rhyme there for you. That's for some people, not for everybody. And definitely if you want to be average or slightly above average, home ownership is the thing for you. But if you really want to exceed and excel in life, maybe think about other things. Like, for example, investing in the S&P 500 index fund with that same amount of money that you would have invested in a home. I think I have a video about that. Take a look on the screen right now, just in case. And remember, a goal without a plan is a wish. A goal with a plan and no action is a wish list. This is Derek West, you're watching Finance Squared. I'll catch you in the next video.